They earn their road stripes in bands with names that conjure up a time of musical innocence. Free, King Crimson, and Mott the Hoople.
It's a strange alliance if you think Mott the Hoople, Free, King Crimson. It's so what?
They created a stripped-down rock blues sound all their own and penned some of rock's most iconic anthems.
There was a magic there from the very beginning.
Today, their hits are still on heavy classic radio rotation, just as they were on car radios in the 70s.
Paul Rodgers, I think, has and had the most perfect voice to sing rock songs of anybody.
They're delicious. Why do we keep listening to it? Because it tastes good.
I'm rolling with them playing.
They faced tragedies that would have crushed many rock and roll bands, beginning with the death of founding Free member Paul Kossoff.
Yes, I got some bad news. Paul Kossoff died last night. Oh. Still gets me.
Then the bottle killed their friend and mentor, Led Zeppelin's John Bonham.
It's like there's a fuse going to blow somewhere, and sometimes somebody dies for that fuse to break.
And drink threatened to destroy the drummer who had been there from the start.
I was an addict. I had an addictive personality.
Then in 2006, excess took the life of their longtime bandmate.
And it's like losing a relative when one of the guys dies like that. He had a glass of vodka in one hand, he had a joint in the ashtray, and he was just playing along and suddenly just slipped under the table.
But their sheer determination and a steely English work ethic held the band together.
Sheer balls. That's what Bad Company was about.
Bad Company is still rocking today, and they sound just as fresh as they did 40 years ago.
They always have had that sort of slightly badass Reservoir Dogs vibe. They're like rock and roll criminals who got away with it.
This is the story of the band that got away with it. Bad Company, the story behind the music. Malmö, Sweden, 2012. And nearly 40 years after they first played together, the band are rehearsing for the Sweden Rocks Festival.
After doing it for so long, it's sort of embedded in your brain, I guess, to a degree, in a nice way.
Guitarist Mick and singer Paul Rodgers have developed a hit-making chemistry over the years.
He's got this amazing ability to step inside the song with me, and we go to another place.
And Simon Kirke continues to provide the rock-solid R&B beat that's integral to the band.
This is where I feel most complete.
Bad Company are like a great steak and a fully loaded baked potato with sour cream and butter. Why do we keep listening to it? Because it tastes good.
And this good-tasting rock and roll has been enjoyed by fans worldwide for...
Make it their own English, tough, hard as nails, very sparse, very open kind of music. And it just kicked butt.
It was the death of another hit-making rock band that gave life to Bad Company.
Bad Company was born from the ashes of Free in lots of ways.
In 1968, the London blues scene was brimming with exciting new bands, including a quartet of talented teenagers called Free, featuring Andy Fraser on bass, guitarist Paul Kossoff, drummer Simon Kirke, and lead singer Paul Rodgers.
Baby, won't you tell me what you're trying to do?
Free were really exciting. They were just punks. They had all this energy, they had all this moxie. They really
Guy in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
All right now, baby, it's all right now.
Just 2 years after they started playing together, Free released their smash 1970 single, All Right Now.
All right now.
But for the young members of Free, just barely pushing 20, their first big hit brought with it the intense pressures of rock superstardom.
All Right Now catapulted us As much as we wanted to be, you know, rock stars or whatever and have all the trappings that gives, I don't think we were ready.
Everybody wants to go gung-ho. There's more and more gigs, more and more shows, bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's no rest.
As the pressure mounted, guitarist Paul Kossoff began experimenting with heroin.
Kos was like this desperate soul crying in the wilderness.
You know, the first time I came in and saw him slumped over, I thought he was asleep, you know, but he had his guitar across his lap.
In 1971, less than a year after All Right Now hit the charts, Andy Fraser and Paul Rodgers decided to quit Free.
They dropped the bombshell that this tour would be the last. It hit Paul Kossoff really hard. This is what we've been striving for a couple of years, and we just got there, and now it was all going to fizzle out.
It hit him like a ton of bricks, and suddenly there was a great void in his life.
Koss's intake was getting really bad, and he was in a really bad way. And although we'd only been together a few years, there was an intense love between the four of us. And to see one of our buddies start to spiral downwards like this was really heartbreaking.
We actually reformed the band when we realized what a state he was getting into, you know.
In January of '72, Free reluctantly reunited and rallied around their brilliant but troubled lead guitarist to record their final album.
And I called it Heartbreaker because it was a heartbreaking thing to be around, because he seemed bent on a self-destructive course.
Use proved impossible for him and the band to overcome.
And I remember 5 minutes before we went on stage, placing his left hand on the strings to show him the chords to All Right Now. It goes there. I'm going, I can't believe this.
He had taken something earlier, and it would kick in just about when he walked on stage, and I see him turning around, and he's about to switch his amp on, and he can't find the switch. You know, it's like one of them. It's like, oh, and I'm like, oh, no.
In the end, we just couldn't take it anymore and said, look, that's it.
Free was dead. And though the band's demise was a painful blow, for Paul Rodgers and Simon Kirke, there were bigger and badder things to come. Coming up, the very public offering of a brand new company.
I suppose the word Supergroup was bandied about. It imposed on us a mantle of pressure that we didn't need.
And later, an ex-bandmate's death rocks the former members of Free.
We thought if we told Paul, he would, you know, he'd want to cancel the show.
They figured I'd just freak and just like, well, I'd just cancel the Bad Company tour and go back, which I very nearly did.
When Behind the Music continues.
Johnny's life passed him by like a warm summer day.
With their classic hit, All Right Now, Free established themselves as stars in the summer of 1970. But guitarist Paul Kossoff's heroin habit eventually ruined the band's promising future. When Free broke up for good in 1973, 24-year-old Paul Rodgers vowed not to relive the tragic mistakes of the past.
I decided that I wanted a band where everyone had their head screwed on and nobody was doing anything that was too silly as far as, you know, substances and all of that. Because you can't work with people that are out of their mind. It just doesn't happen. In between Free and Bad Company, I had a little band that I called Peace, and we went out and toured with Mott the Hoople.
While on the road, Rodgers struck up a friendship with Mott the Hoople's lead guitarist, Mick Ralphs. Ralphs had become disenchanted with Mott's glitter rock sound and pose.
I was always into R&B and soul music and the blues, and I wanted to get something that was more that way inclined, and I could see Mott wasn't going to be that way anymore.
He'd become a little frustrated with the band because he was veering off in a different direction musically.
We'd hang out in the dressing room and he'd say, what do you do? And I said, well, I got all these songs and I don't know what to do with them.
He played like Can't Get Enough of Your Love, and I was like, wow, that's a great song. And he's like, do you think so? I said, yeah, it's a great song, man. It's a great song. I'll sing that. Give it to me, I'll sing it.
And then I played him Moving On and Ready for Love, and those were the sort of songs he felt he could get behind. And I said, well, fine, let's work together and see what happens.
Paul asked his friend and former Free drummer Simon Kirke to join their new musical venture.
So, yeah, all right. Suckers for punishment. We had to get a bass player. We had tried several bass players, and they're a very slippery breed.
So in desperation, somebody said, well, why don't you give this bloke Boz a try?
26-year-old bassist Boz Burrell was a veteran of yet another famous band.
Dark harbor keys like fingers of snow.
King Crimson catered to their tripped-out audience with strange melodies and psychedelic lyrics.
Nonsense. Crystal ships in silver seas and all that gobshite.
It wasn't a scene that the R&B-loving Boz Burrell enjoyed.
I just got pissed off with it.
King Crimson's loss became Bad Company's gain. With the band complete, expectations began to rise. Paul, Simon, Mick, and Boz had all been in bands that sold millions of records. Their new group was big news and a big risk. It had to be a winner from the start or go down as one of the most high-profile failures in rock history.
I suppose the word supergroup was bandied about. It imposed on us a mantle of pressure that we didn't need.
They called themselves Bad Company. What they needed next was someone to manage what could be a very big business.
Paul said, you know, we're going to be the biggest band in the world, so we need the best manager in the world, and who's that?
I thought, well, we can't have, you know, Elvis Presley's manager, the Colonel, probably not. Who was the biggest band in the world? And it was Led Zeppelin at the time.
Led Zeppelin's larger-than-life manager, Peter Grant, was famous for his negotiating strength and marketing genius. Grant agreed to manage the promising quartet and signed them as the first band on Led Zeppelin's new record label, Swans.
They cautioned their new label mates.
They wanted everything to be right, and they weren't going to have us screw it up. And I got this call saying, John Bonham wants to see you in his room. And it was like, now guys, this is our business, and you're going to behave. It was like, talk about the pot calling the kettle black. It's like...
The irony of Bonzo John Bonham laying down the law wasn't lost on anyone.
Really, yeah, John Bonham, the hooligan of England, had to tell us to behave. Great.
In the summer of '74, Bad Company released their self-titled debut album amid the hype and hoopla raised by their supergroup status. Bad Company's basic musical formula was simple: soulful melodies, powerful riffs, and Paul Rodgers' soaring blues-drenched vocals.
It's pretty much basic stripped-down rock and roll, you know, no frills attached, heart and soul.
Bad Company songs were punchy, they were to the point, they had great choruses, and they had one of the greatest singers in the history of rock and roll, Paul Rodgers.
He was able to have passion and soulfulness and gruffness in his voice, and at the same time sing a pop song.
Succeeded the hype. Their debut album produced no less than 5 top 40 singles.
It was a rock and roll fantasy, if I may say.
Album right away.
When the first record came out and was successful, there was a pressure to live up to it and do better. That's when the pressure started then, I think.
I've proved Bad Company was no fluke. Straight Shooter went to #3 on the US and British album charts.
We were doing longer tours, big tours, bigger stadiums.
The pressure of actually being there and playing, having to put a good performance every night, whether you feel up to it or not, it's not an easy industry.
Something happens when there is too much pressure on an artist or a band. It's like there's a fuse going to blow somewhere, and sometimes somebody dies for that fuse to break.
Rock and roll's increasing death toll inspired Rodgers' emotional power ballad, Shooting Star.
It had occurred to me prior to writing the song that there were a lot of casualties in the music business. I mean, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison and Keith Moon, and I mean, that's just without really thinking too hard about it.
The sad story of Shooting Star struck close to home when in the spring of '76, old friend and former Free guitarist Paul Kossoff, weakened by years of drug abuse, died of a heart attack.
Peter Grant phoned me from his room, said, "Oh, sorry, can I come down?" So I knew something was up. He said, "I got some bad news." I said, "Oh, what?" He said, "Paul Kossoff died last night." I went, "Oh."
Johnny died one night, died in his bed.
Still gets me. It still gets me.
You know, they didn't tell me because they figured I'd just freak and it's like, oh, I'd just cancel the Bad Company tour and go back, which I very nearly did.
So we didn't tell Paul until after the show, and he was quite mad because we did Shooting Star, and I lost it when we did Shooting Star because it was...
Coming up, Death pays another visit to Bad Company, and later Paul Rodgers calls it quits.
I just felt that it was all getting a little crazy.
Paul just went off and that was it.
When Behind the Music continues.
Or speak to anyone in relation to it.
But he was, you know, he was at peace. And that was the main thing.
I grieved, you know. It was very hard to lose a friend and a great musician, you know. But I had to keep on working, you know, and so I just really just threw myself into the tour at that time and worked my way through it.
The bottom line was we were on this crazy carousel of album, tour, album, tour, album, tour.
Some people say I'm no good, lay in my bed all day, but when the nighttime comes, I'm ready to rock and roll my troubles away.
They were growing weary of the road, but Bad Company's success had become a double-edged sword, as each new hit album led to bigger tours and mounting pressures.
We'd come off of another mega tour, you know, everything was mega, and there wasn't time to sort of get your head together to write. You were just sort of recovering from the tour.
The company had only known life at the top. They were living a rock and roll dream. And on their 1979 album, Desolation Angel, the next year, Bad Company was rudely awakened from its rock and roll fantasy. That September, they lost one of their closest friends and mentors when Led Zeppelin drummer John Bonham died after a long night of drinking.
It was just one of those drinking binges that didn't stop. We all could see the danger it might possibly happen, but he never actually thought it would. He seemed to be indestructible, and he probably thought he was.
Tragic, absolutely tragic. We lost a friend and a great talent again, you know.
Indirectly caused the end of us as well.
Bonham's death sent shockwaves through the entire Swan Song family.
Bonzo, when he died, certainly couldn't be replaced, and for Zeppelins to continue without him would have been unthinkable, so they broke up, and that was Peter's baby, really.
Led Zeppelin's manager, Peter Grant, was stunned by the sudden loss of Bonham.
Peter had lost a lot of heart. I mean, you know, he'd lost a dear friend. He lost interest in the whole business. He couldn't function anymore, and we needed him to function. He was like the father figure.
He was our anchor, and without him, we just kind of became like shifting sands.
So we started sort of trying to run it ourselves. And of course,
the man who wrote Shooting Star and Rock and Roll Fantasy.
It was getting way out of hand sometimes, and I wanted to have some home life and be with my family and spend some quality time with my kids who were young at the time, and I wanted to see them grow up a little bit because you know, they were...
Paul, Simon, Mick, and Boz went their separate ways.
If we hadn't stopped then, you know, it's terrible to say, but I think something bad could have happened to one of us, maybe. The warning signs were there, you know, especially when John Bonham passed away.
After a year-and-a-half-long sabbatical, Bad Company regrouped in 1982 to record their sixth album. But the sessions for Rough Diamonds were rough going.
You know, when it comes to relationships, once it starts getting violent, that's it. There was a fist fight primarily between Boz and Paul. And Mick joined in, and I was ready with a bucket of water. It was just internal frustrations on Paul's part, and it was just like a boil, you know. Finally, we actually finished the album in true British style. nursing our swollen lips. And it was the one album that we didn't tour behind because, you know, Paul just went off and that was it.
I felt that it was taking over my life. I just had to stop with this thing and let it go, you know.
So 6 months went by and then a year. So I thought, well, just let him have his space, you know. He obviously needs it.
And, you know, after a couple of years I figured, well, I guess he's not coming back.
After leaving Bad Company, Paul Rodgers tried to recreate the supergroup magic by merging with former Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page to form The Firm. Rodgers was eager to step out of Bad Company's shadow. Page was trying to move past the death of John Bonham.
He hadn't played for a long, long time, you know, and I got him back playing, which I thought was the main thing he needed to do, because he was very upset. At the end of the 2 tours and 2 albums, we both felt, well, okay, that was great, you know, and we went off to do different things, you know, and left it alone. And actually, I'll say this, I'm proud to say that I've worked with Jimmy Page.
Bad Company officially announced its breakup in 1983, then slipped into rock and roll history.
Ain't it funny? Time goes by.
It would be 3 years before Bad Company would re-emerge in a new incarnation.
Somehow you don't notice me.
Coming up, another Bad Company, another breakup.
It wasn't Bad Company. To me, it was a band, but it wasn't Bad Company.
The final tour with Brian Howe, we were just sick to death of each other.
And later, a mentor's death is the catalyst for a long overdue reunion.
I was convinced that there was no way I would ever want to meet up with the guys in particular, you know.
When Behind the Music continues.
Moved by the death of John Bonham and increasingly concerned about becoming a rock and roll casualty himself, Paul Rodgers left Bad Company in 1982. The band split up officially a year later, and Bad Company lay dormant until their 1985 Greatest Hits album was released.
A very astute move, I think, because it's one of our best-selling albums.
The success of 10 from 6 sparked renewed public interest in Bad Company, and Atlantic Records was quick to capitalize.
Arnold Ertegun, the head of Atlantic, called Mick and myself and said, how would we feel about reforming the band?
3 of the band's 4 original members reunited: Simon Kirke, Mick Rouse, and Boz Burrell. 2 questions remained: who would sing in place of Paul Rodgers, and what would this new band be called? Ted Nugent frontman Brian Howe was a leading candidate for lead vocalist.
Mick Jones from Foreigner called me up and said, would I be interested in forming a new group with Mick Rouse and Simon Kirke? We ended up having a few rehearsals, and things went pretty good.
Howe signed on to sing with the group. According to Howe, it was Atlantic Records that suggested the new band be called Bad Company.
And they said, well, look, the record's going to be out in 2 or 3 months. We really need to come up with something. How about calling it Bad Company? And as soon as I heard that, I thought, oh, God.
I didn't like it, and I also said, this is corporate bull, and I was shouted down.
It's the brand name. They wanted to carry the brand name on, right? Now, Paul legged it, and I didn't see why Mick and Simon shouldn't go out and earn some bucks.
What the hell, you know? Paul's left, but there's still 3 original members, so we'll give it a go.
It wasn't Bad Company. To me, it was a band, but it wasn't Bad Company.
The name Bad Company meant instant recognition. It also meant Brian Howe had some big shoes to fill.
I didn't want to be put into the direct confrontation with Paul Rodgers' voice. I mean, I'm not Paul Rodgers. I don't sing like Paul Rodgers.
Without the distinctive soulful vocals of Paul Rodgers, the new band's sound drifted away from the powerful R&B grooves that defined the classic. Burrell became the first original member to quit the new Bad Company.
I did 2 months and I went, nah, get out.
Maintained an uneasy working relationship with Mick and Simon. Though the second incarnation never approached the superstar status of the original band, they did record 3 gold albums.
We had a couple of hits, you know, Holy Water was quite a big hit. And we toured, we did a lot of tours. But it just wasn't the same.
It had success, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. I didn't like the sort of material, I didn't like the way it sounded. I didn't like the bullshit that was going on within the band, and I just didn't like it.
Over the years, tensions were building between Mick, Simon, and Brian Howe.
I wasn't getting on with Brian. I was seeking refuge in drinking a lot, and my marriage was beginning to suffer.
There wasn't anything that was even remotely band-like about the whole thing. And it was becoming a pain. It was really becoming a massive pain.
By 1994, something had to give.
The final tour with Brian Howe, we were just sick to death of each other. There's a diplomatic answer. And he went his way, we went ours very, very quickly.
In 1994, Brian Howe departed and Mick and Simon put together a third version of Bad Company. But by 1995, a tired and disgruntled Mick Ralphs came off the road for good.
And then a year later, Simon did the same thing, and that was the end of it.
By this time, I knew that I was an alcoholic. Brandy in the morning. Good sign. I said, look, I can't do this anymore. I really can't. This is killing me. It's killing my marriage. My kids never see me. Even my dogs didn't know me. You know, we were flogging a dead horse, so we folded it all. I remember Robert Plant coming up. We were all sat in a car.
We sat in a Range Rover and chatted about old times, you know.
I remember Robert came up to the car and said, you know, enough of these pretenders, get the original band back together. And it was like, well, yeah, we'll see.
Where did they go?
One thing really just led to another. That started them talking, and then it got onto the subject of maybe it would be a good idea and a good time to release a box set, and it just progressed from there.
You remember Bad Company? Paul Mick and Simon. No.
3 years after Grant's funeral, the 4 original bandmates played together for the first time in 16 years when they reunited in the studio to record 4 new tracks for a Bad Company box set.
Call out the dogs and the National Guard. My baby got away and I'm taking it hard.
So it was kind of difficult to get everybody together, but eventually we all met up in the studio to record these 4 new songs, 2 of mine and 2 of Paul's, which are now on the box set. And it was like a period at first where everybody was a bit cautious.
We walked in the studio and we started to play, and it was a little tense.
Paul came in, he counted off Can't Get Enough, which sort of dusted the cobwebs out of us, and then we just laid down the tracks there.
We all fell into our 4 roles almost immediately. It was uncanny. You know, Paul is the kind of the strict one who stands no nonsense. And Mick is the funny one, and Boz is Boz.
I've been studying the music, and now, yeah, I can hopefully funk out with the best of them and enjoy it.
I better get the boys round. We're gonna do a little smoking and drinking fest. Oh my God.
Coming up, one of the very best of Bad Company passes away.
If a musician has to go, that's quite a way to go.
But once again, the band closes ranks and keeps on rocking when Behind the Music continues.
Where are they now? Everybody, where did they go?
In the years years after Bad Company's 1982 breakup, Paul Rodgers, Simon Kirke, Mick Ralphs, and Boz Burrell drifted apart. They came together 14 years later over the death of their good friend and former manager, Peter Grant.
Peter was a great believer in believing in yourself. And one of the things he would say was there are three things to remember. Believe, believe, believe.
Bad Company's newfound faith in each other was put to the test when they reunited to record 4 new songs for their 1999 box set.
Ooh, baby, I'm in love again. I love the way you baby talk.
Their faith was rewarded when the box set sessions inspired even bigger plans. The one and only Bad Company returned to the concert stage for a 30-city U.S. tour in the summer of '99. The boys and their classic songs were back.
Well, now take whatever I want, yeah, and baby, I want you.
Once Paul got back, you know, we did that tour in '99. You know, it's like, it was just perfect.
But not perfect for everyone. After the 2000 tour, Mick Ralphs announced he was leaving the band to undergo surgery.
It was just one of those things, and put me out of action for a few months.
But Paul and Simon Kirke were back in action in 2001 for another tour, another album, and another hit.
I think I was watching something on the TV, and it just made me think about, you know, who's going to be the next big thing, the next Joe Fabulous, and I just wrote the song.
The song was a #1 radio hit, and just like Joe Fabulous, Paul was soon off again, following his singular star.
Paul is the key guy in the band. The other guys were under the radar, and Paul was above the radar.
2 for 1 special, and it was very, very special.
And the new lineup had a very special launch, playing for Nelson Mandela's AIDS awareness campaign. They also performed in London's Hyde Park for his 80th birthday.
But they lacked the front man, you know, so I was able to be that last cog in the wheel, and I was quite happy to play that part for a while.
In May 2006, Paul and Queen were honored at the first ever VH1 Rock Honors.
They played my songs great, and I hope I did justice to theirs.
But one ex-band member would never play those great songs again. In the fall of 2006, tragedy struck with the sudden death of bass player Boz Burrell, who died of a heart attack at his home in Spain. Boz was laid to rest in Edinburgh, Scotland, and a memorial erected to his memory. His fellow band members keep very different memories of him.
Part of me was relieved because I knew Boz was having a hard time. He was drinking and drugging a lot, and it really affected his personality.
Well, he was fun. He was, you know, I always had a big smile on his face, but most of the time.
He was round the table, and he had his bass, and he had a glass of vodka in one hand, he had a joint in the ashtray, and he was just playing along, and suddenly he just slipped under the table. I mean, if a musician has to go, that's quite a way to go.
There is a song that Boz wrote. He started to write towards the end of the band's time together in those days, and he wrote a song called Gone, 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 which we're doing in the set now. Yeah, it's our little dedication to Boz, yeah.
In 2008, Paul was back with Queen again, playing to 360,000 fans in Kharkov, Ukraine. Paul still wasn't Freddie Mercury, but the fans clearly loved what they saw and heard. By the time the collaboration ended in 2009, they had completed 2 sellout world tours and released the first Queen album in 15 years, The Cosmos Rocks. Meanwhile, Simon Kirke was working on his solo projects too, but his audience was nearer 360 than 360,000.
I released a couple of solo albums, which the combined sales I feel I should take them all out to dinner.
I'm one day closer to you.
With Paul Rodgers unavailable, some watchers wondered if Simon couldn't provide a homegrown alternative.
Simon, the great drummer from Bad Company, sang the Bad Company hits. He sang a couple, and he was remarkable. I almost wish when Paul Rodgers left, if they wanted to continue, they had done a Genesis and said, hey, let's move the drummer up. Let him sing.
I mean, Collins was the best singer in Genesis. I mean, he had the strongest voice. But for me to do, no, I mean, because I can't sing as well as Paul.
"40 years on, and with Paul still out front, the core of Bad Company are still playing together."
We were born and raised in the non-digital era, and we learned our playing and our songwriting as a craft. I don't want to sound pompous, but I think it gave us a very good grounding.
Yeah, that's cooler and meaner, isn't it?
It's that real down-to-earth mentality and their bad boy image that has made Bad Company that musical rarity, a supergroup that is still together and still drawing the crowds.
Even that name, Bad Company, they always have had that sort of, you know, slightly badass Reservoir Dogs vibe.
Would these long-time bad boys of rock do it all again?
I wouldn't have had that first joint Dave Gilmour gave me.
I know I wouldn't change anything. It's whatever happens in your life is part of your life, and you shouldn't want to change any of it, you know, good or bad.
And I wouldn't have done coke, you know, there for all you out there.
They're like rock and roll criminals who got away with it, and I think they're still getting away with it.
I'd like people to think that that's the guy who sang very well till the end of his days.